Welcome everyone, this is Eric Bobrow, and this is the ArchiCAD User Group Online Hangout. I'm going to be doing these Hangouts about every month or so to connect all of us as a community of ArchiCAD users. This month we have some really great news and things to talk about. ArchiCAD 18 is about to be released, and I'll give you some of my comments and observations about ArchiCAD 18. I've just launched a new website called ArchiCAD User, which I think is going to be a really nice tool for you to stay up to date on the latest ArchiCAD news, as well as providing a user directory so you can connect with each other. You can see who else is an ArchiCAD user in your area. And find how to reach other ArchiCAD users. There's a jobs board and tutorials, and these coaching hangouts will be available through the ArchiCAD user website as well. I'll have some other announcements towards the end of the call. I hope you can stay on for the full hour. And after I do the initial ArchiCAD 18, sort of talking about that, and the ArchiCAD user website, I'll do some Q&A. I've got a few questions picked out from the questions sent in about ArchiCAD, so technical questions, and I'll be demonstrating how to do a few things in ArchiCAD that I hope you enjoy and learn from. And then we'll finish up with some very special announcements, so stick around to the end, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Okay, so let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's see, screen share, and let's say that I'm going to screen share this desktop, and it's going to be a little bit weird because it's going to initially probably you get a little funny kaleidoscope image as it shows the video of me on screen. But now I've switched over to Graphisoft's website. So I'm sure you all know that ArchiCAD 18 is about to be released. Last I heard is that it'll be released somewhere in the middle of the month. Of course, that's subject to some change if there are any last-minute delays, but basically I would expect to see it sometime around the 15th or 20th of June that you would be able to download your version of ArchiCAD 18. They do that always for the English version first, and maybe German around the same time, and then they start going through all the other language versions, and there are, I think, maybe 20 language versions or something. And at that point, you'll have access to all of the new tools. Now, certainly I don't want to try to demonstrate or explain ArchiCAD 18 in detail because, first of all, I don't have a copy of it, and secondly, Graphisoft is doing that with online webinars. There was a webinar this morning here in the U.S. That I attended, and they're doing one on June 17th that I think will be worldwide here. Now, if I click on, ArchiCAD here, you'll see that it has the main highlights of what's new. And what I'd like to do is just comment on what I think are the important points here. ArchiCAD, I think Graphisoft always picks a few things to focus on for each new version. And I think that communication and collaboration and tracking of the work process are probably the key terms here. I don't know if they have a particular sort of slogan that combines those, but if we look at this, there are some really powerful tools for collaboration in terms of extending the ability to communicate with consultants and to track the workflow of a project that could be all in-house. In other words, just you're working as an architect and you don't have a structural engineer doing drawings. You're just producing your own drawings. So how do you track revisions? There's some very elegant systems built on top of what has been around in ArchiCAD, the markup palette and the markup tools that integrate with revision management. I was actually very impressed with the presentation this morning that I caught by Yanni Alexakis of Graphisoft US. So this is another example, sort of like, I would say, the renovation tool, where before ArchiCAD 15 there were ways to put revision markers to say, you know, this is a new issue set, and to cloud the things that have changed, but it was never integrated into the workflow. And now you have the tools that just automatically make it possible to track these things and put notes down. Very, very elegant. So I'm not going to be trying to demonstrate that. I just think that that's a really key part of the workflow, and it's not so much sexy in the sense of, like, you know, fancy 3D modeling like the morph tool, and, you know, the swooping buildings and things like that, but it really will improve your efficiency in creating those documents. Now, the rendering tool of CineRender, based on Cinema 4D, I was also impressed with. I saw not only, you know, some end result images that, you know, Graphisoft compared. You know, here's Cinema 4D's rendering, or the rendering with the new CineRender tools in ArchiCAD 18 for the same building. They had a rendering in Lightworks, and the difference was dramatic. You know, Lightworks was nice. This was much more realistic, much more tactile. Just felt, you know, like you were really at the building. Now, in addition to that, they seem to have done some things where you can have a rendering in progress and maybe even go on working on the building. So that was sort of interesting, how Yanni you know, started a rendering and then went and changed some settings and did things. So we'll see. I think that in general, ArchiCAD is really getting more and more optimized for multi-core processors. So obviously, all current computers in general have 2 or 4 or more cores, and those allow more processes to happen in parallel. So I think that you know, they've made the rendering faster because it can use multiple cores, and also sort of split it off so that it appears you can start a rendering process and then go do some more work. So I'm not, you know, haven't started working with it, but it looks very impressive. And the other thing about it is that while it retains all of the, let's say, complex settings that you could use in Cinema 4D, or at least many, many complex settings, they've also done some very clever use of presets. So you can say, I want daytime lighting, you know, sunny day, or I want interior daytime lighting, or interior nighttime, and so it will quickly change the look of the whole building or the whole scene based on those presets. And a little clever one they have is one that will render in white, so you basically can turn off all of the materiality. So you might actually have some materials picked out, stone and, you know, different colors, but you want in your initial meetings with the client or presentations to make it look all white, like foam core. You know, very practical, simple. You know, click once and you're now rendering in that style. So I see a question from Gordon saying, what's changed to make Cinema 4D the engine of choice of ArchiCAD ahead of, say, Artlantis? I can't really speculate too deeply on that. I think Graphisoft and Advent, who makes the company that makes Artlantis, have had a very long history together, and I think we'll continue to have a good connection. If you want to export from ArchiCAD to Artlantis, that'll still work. But Cinema 4D is owned by Maxon, and Maxon is part of the Nemetschek group. So these two companies are actually owned by the same, you know, larger organization. And this is an example of maybe some more dedicated, you know, taking the best of a tool, you know, a dedicated rendering and animation tool, and putting it inside ArchiCAD. Now, I think that probably I didn't see any features in terms of animation demonstrated today, so I don't know, but I'm assuming that we can do basic animation like we always have been, where you can set multiple camera positions and render and animation. But my guess is that you wouldn't have some of the object animation built in, because that really needs to have a dedicated user interface for it. So in Atlantis Studio, for example, you can have people moving around, or cars driving by, or doors opening, you know, other sort of effects that you can set up for an animation. So I don't see that that would be replaced. In terms of other realism, I don't know, Cinema 4D looks, or the CineRender looks very high quality, similar to what Atlantis can do, and so we'll have to see. I think what's great is that you don't have to pay anything extra, and it's inside ArchiCAD, so there's no overhead for export. So you can get a much higher quality than Lightworks pretty darn easily as just a byproduct of your regular modeling work. Now, the OpenBIM, I'll just mention briefly. I'm sure that there's various changes under the hood for exchange of data with engineers, but one very useful thing for integrated project development, IPD, is that when you when you notice there's a problem, we've integrated the the mechanical or structural model into your ArchiCAD model, and you notice there's a conflict, instead of just having to send an email or have a meeting, you can literally take a snapshot of a view which has that area where the problem is, and send that as a what they call a BIM collaboration format, or BCF issue. And this issue then, when it's opened up in the structural program, including apparently Revit, will automatically allow the viewer in that remote application to see the same position in the model, basically to go to the room or go to the area where the problem is. And there can even be discussion and tracking of the revisions. So I haven't seen it in detail, but it looks like it'll definitely speed up all of that collaborative work. Now, Bimcloud integration is something that I'll mention briefly. It was not featured in the presentation today by Graphisoft, and I think for good reason. It is not, and I repeat, not a tool for the average user. It's a sexy technology. It's built on top of the BIM server that we've had in ArchiCAD since ArchiCAD 13, but it is for the large firms who manage multiple BIM servers, very large projects, and want to make sure that they can move projects around, potentially split projects between two servers, have no downtime if they need to switch machines out. It's a management tool for the BIM servers in a large company, and it's a separate product. So it's actually a web-based interface to manage the BIM servers. So while it's really cool, it is not something that you or I will use in our daily work. On the other hand, the BIM server becomes easier and easier to work with, and one thing that I will be announcing a little later is the availability of a public BIM server that I am launching as of next week. And so if you are a small office and don't want to deal with making ArchiCAD for Teamwork, the BIM server in your office available from outside, setting up the IT to be able to log in from home or have a consultant connect, or a team of several consultants, I'm setting up a BIM server in the cloud that will be available to ArchiCAD users. So I'll be describing a little bit more about that later on. So other things that are put in here for workflow enhancements, I haven't really seen much yet, so I can't comment, other than one thing where, say, multiple stories were displayed in a model with a cutaway, and multiple slabs were selected, and a hole in the slab was created for all of those slabs all at once, and even adjusted. And apparently you can do changes to multiple walls that are stacked vertically and things like that. So there is some, let's say, enhancement there. It looks useful in certain contexts. I imagine that here and there throughout the interface there'll be a lot of improvements. So where does this leave ArchiCAD after 30 years. I think it leaves ArchiCAD as, or not leaves, where does it put ArchiCAD? Puts ArchiCAD in the forefront of technology. I think the tools for integrating the rendering, integrating the revision tracking, and the collaboration are really world-class, state-of-the-art. I think that in general, ArchiCAD's ease of use continues to improve, and the options that you have as ArchiCAD users will continue to be really amazing assets for you. Now, competitive-wise, where does Graphisoft stand? I mean, I'm not an expert on that. In other words, I keep tabs on the news and things, but I'm not positioning myself as an expert on where will the industry go and will ArchiCAD grow more or not grow. But I do see some interesting wins. And what I'll say about that is that Graphisoft has a very strong following in certain parts of the world, including many countries in Europe, like Germany, and in Asia, in Japan particularly, and China, and even down in, I believe, in Australia and New Zealand very well. Now, in the US here, we're in a weaker position. Autodesk, obviously, is the dominant player and has tons of marketing money and, sort of convinces people that, if you don't have an Autodesk product, you're taking some sort of risk. But Graphisoft as a company, I think, is going to prosper because in places where they don't really care if it's an American company supplying the software or not, in fact, they might prefer it not being an American company, then it has a leg up, and as a technology leader, it is awesome. In Japan, apparently something like 3 or 4 of the top 5 architectural firms have standardized on ArchiCAD. If you think about it, Japan is one of the larger and most developed technology countries in the world, and the fact that Graphisoft has been able to establish such a strong position in Japan is amazing. Now, how does that affect people here in the US, since I know probably most of the people on this Hangout are in the US, or at least a majority? I think there are some wins, there are some things that people will hear. The likelihood is that ArchiCAD will be stable here in the US. There are going to be some people who say, I can't find staff that use ArchiCAD because everybody's learning Revit, or some people who are afraid, I better have Revit to be able to provide those files. But on the other hand, I hear from people who sign up for my training courses that they were using Revit and they've had challenges or frustrations. They've looked at ArchiCAD and they've switched. So there are certainly some who come back the other way. And I think a combination of the new tools in 18, some of the proving out of ArchiCAD on huge projects and huge companies in Japan will give us some real support. And then one thing I didn't mention is BIMX docs. So if you haven't actually checked out BIMX, it's the basic version of BIMX is built into ArchiCAD. It is been enhanced in the last 6 months with a tool called BIMX Docs, D-O-C-S, like documents, that integrates the 2D information along with the 3D in a very intuitive, just really slick way. Now, it's a little limited right now because it only works on iOS, so iPad or iPhone, but they are coming out with an Android version, and hopefully they'll also come out with a desktop version. But it makes so much sense that, and I think the tools that Graphisoft has put together are quite a bit more advanced than anybody else has. So I think that this is actually sort of a little Trojan horse, that as it gets used and seen, even here in the US, it's going to position Graphisoft for more success. So that's my take on a sort of competitive level. I think here in the US, we're not going to go anywhere fast. In other words, we're not going to lose a lot of people and we're not going to gain a lot of people fast. But over time, I think we actually have a real potential to grow and become a much stronger you know, presence here in the U.S. and worldwide. There's no question that Graphisoft is doing just fine. If you compare them to car companies, they may not be the Toyota or, you know, whatever is the #1, you know, mass market one, and maybe you want to say that they're the BMW or something like that. It's not a bad position to be the, you know, elite or the best, even if not everybody uses it or not everybody can afford it. And I don't think there's any direct comparison. You know, are we the BMW or are we the Mercedes or are we the, you know, what company are we? And even in terms of operating system, you know, are we the Mac to Windows, with Windows being the dominant player, but Apple now being, you know, seen as a more successful, innovative company than Microsoft, at least by some people. I don't know. I don't think you can make a direct comparison, but I think all of us, if we hang in there together, take advantage of what ArchiCAD offers, we're, you know, going to have a great journey and be able to serve our clients, create great designs with this tool. So that's my take on it, and maybe a little bit of, you know, inspirational talk. Now let's look at. Oh, I see a comment from Kenneth. I've used Revit and have switched over 4 years ago. It's the best thing I ever did. Well, that's great. Thank you, Kenneth. So I see some other comments. Let me just look at some of the chat things. So Haraldar, I think it's in Iceland, said that Big is going from Revit to ArchiCAD because of ease of collaboration. So Big is a firm, I think, in Norway or somewhere in the Scandinavian countries, and it's a pretty large firm. I mean, its initials BIG. I can't remember what it is, rather than being big firm. But in any event, you know, I see a lot of comments here about this. Another question I wanted to answer from Gordon is, there was a note on the install of version 17 that it would be the last version that would run on Snow Leopard. Will that be the case? I believe so. So if you're a Mac user and you're on Mac OS 10.6, which is Snow Leopard, then version 18 will not run on that. In fact, I'm not even quite sure about whether Lion, which is 10.7, is supported. I can't remember about that. So you'll have to check with, you know, the website here, the Graphisoft website, to see the requirements. But fortunately, if you're a Mac user and you have a reasonably modern machine, the upgrade to Mavericks, the current Mac OS, is free. So literally, you could be on Mountain Lion or Snow Leopard, and you could just download and install the current operating system. So that shouldn't be an obstacle that way. All right, so let's see. Got this, the ArchiCAD thing here. Let me just put it back to the main one. I don't want to have this animation running in the background for too long here. So let me just switch gears to the ArchiCAD user group website. So this is something that I set up sort of, you know, without a lot of fanfare back in maybe February. It is a resource that is free and will always be free. The front page shows the most recent stories on ArchiCAD. I've been basically adding references here whenever I notice a story about ArchiCAD, but you can literally, if you're logged into the site, you can submit a link, and if you click on submit a link here, it'll just ask you for the link. You click submit, and then it'll ask you for a few details. Sometimes it will pick up the contents of the title of the page and the text automatically. Sometimes you would need to copy and paste it or type it yourself. I usually adapt it a little bit to make it, you know, an excerpt that's readable. The picture you can actually automatically pull from the web page in many cases. Sometimes it doesn't work, so I have to just, you know, put in a picture myself. But basically, these are stories about ArchiCAD. You know, here's the founder of ArchiCAD Deborah Boyar. Here's a story of a firm, Scylla International, that made the switch to ArchiCAD and how they're really happy about it. And here's some things about the Japanese firms. And so there are 4 pages here. This is going to keep on going. There's going to be more and more. And here's that firm Big, that is just switching over to ArchiCAD in Scandinavia. So if you click on any one of these here, it'll take you to where the article is. So this is basically a place where you can find the latest things or stories about ArchiCAD and then go off and look at them. Now you can also, there's a reading list. So if you hover over it and you're logged in here, you can say I want to save it, and then that's going to be saved for my reading list. If I go to my reading list, then you can see these are ones that I've marked. Now you notice a little thumbs up here. You can actually go back. Let me just go back here. You can go back and as long as you're logged in, you can vote on it. You can say, hey, I really like this. So now when I click on like, you can see it says 1 and it highlights it. So if there are any other ones that I've liked, like this one, it's already there. So you can see some of them have, here's 7 likes for this and 5 for that. So the likes, you can just look at, but you can also click on top stories, and then it orders this by 21 people liking. This is actually just the main Graphisoft. Well, no, I think this is the announcement about ArchiCAD 18, and then this one is the Graphisoft website itself, and here's a tutorial that's many people have liked. So these are the top stories voted by you. Now, how do you become a member? Very simple. You go to the member area page here, and then on that member area page, if you're not logged in, and let me just create a new private window here. So this would be if I'm not logged in and I go to ArchiCAD user here, and then I say member area, log in or register. So you see it says you can sign up for free. All you do is you put in your name and your email address and sign up. If you are already registered, then you just you can log in, and that would give you the ability to submit a link. Here you can see if I click submit a link, it says I need to log in or sign in to it. And so this is how easy it is to be added. Now once you're in, not only can you vote on things and use the reading list and submit links, but you can also be added to the ArchiCAD user directory. So the ArchiCAD user directory here is a free service that it's my intention to connect ArchiCAD users around the world. So right now we've got 150 people who've signed up. You can see as I scroll through it, I've got it organized by country, so you can say who else in the UK or who else in any particular country is using it, and then there's an overall list, and you can actually search by name or by category, like who's using ArchiCAD 17, or maybe more interesting is who does sustainable design or who's involved in education. So you can then find that out. Now once you find somebody, if you look here, let's say Lou Bishop, one of my old friends and clients in my neighborhood. If I click on this, okay, here's some basic information about Lou, but in some cases, let's see, Aaron's, let's see, here's an email address, so if you put in an email address, it'll show up, and let's see, I know some of the people have put in a lot more information. Why am I not seeing, let's see, Tim Ball I know has more stuff. Okay, so here, more information, including a little bit of a biography, or let's see, go. Here's a logo. Here's a face, address. So you can put in whatever you like here, and it will help everyone connect to each other. It's the first worldwide directory of ArchiCAD users, and so this, of course, I'm expecting more and more people to hear about it and add their names. It'll become more useful as we have more, more members. It'll be easier to find things. Now, as part of it, let me just show you if I do have that. Oh, let's see, where is it? I guess I closed that window. Let me just go back in and let me add myself. Actually, yeah, I guess we can just go through this process. It's really simple. So we'll go in here to the site. I'm just going to add myself here, you know, a new test version. So I'll just say I'm going to sign in, and I'm just going to put a number at the end of my name just so it's a different record than my regular one. And I'll sign up. As soon as I sign up, it'll go to page where I can then, so it's just doing some processing in the background here, and you can see that I'm now logged in, and it gives me the option to click here to add my name to the user directory. So I'm going to go in here, and you'll see that I'm now inside the back end of the website, and it has some instructions, and then you can see it's filled in my name here, and I believe the email address that I put in is already filled in. And then I can put in some other information, including checking off categories. You know, am I an owner rather than, or an employee? Do I have some employment I want to offer? So we'll take a look at that in a minute. I can say, yeah, I'm an expert here. I'm not an architect. I'm a consultant. You know, things like that. So I can put those in, and I can even browse for a picture and just, you know, select a picture, and then I'll say add entry. So now that's going to be added in to the board, and if I go back here, if I refresh it, I'd show up. But the other thing I want to show you is the jobs board, because the jobs board, if I click on this, it'll show anyone who had the category. Remember, there were categories of, are you an owner, are you an employee, are you an architect? If you click the box that says you are offering employment or contract work, you'll see the information here. So you can put in the information about this. Now, Jeff Smalley is one of my longtime clients, and he said, you know, he's in Los Angeles. He said, Eric, it's really hard to find people who use ArchiCAD. I said, well, Jeff, you know, here I gave him some suggestions and some people to contact, but I also said, put your listing up here, you know, and right now he's looking for people in LA, but you know, some people, sometimes it can be remote. So here are all of these people saying that they're available to help, you know, with things. And you can see here, Chad Conrad, one of my old friends, nice picture and a whole little description. So, you know, with social media links here, you know, this would go to his LinkedIn or Twitter profiles. So the jobs board has never existed in terms of a overall worldwide jobs board for ArchiCAD, and the user directory as well. So these are two new resources that I'm really proud to share with the ArchiCAD community. Now, in addition, just to help out in terms of, you know, how I focus on training and tutorials, I'm doing some questions of the day. So I'm not doing it every day, but I'm just saying, you know, every so often, whenever I have a little bit of time, I go and I answer a question. So here's a question that I did just about 10 days ago, and a couple of people asked this. Actually, a number of people have asked, and you can see this image has this funny red stuff around it. Some of you may know exactly what that is, but if you don't, the answer is that this pink or red ghost is called the trimming body for the roof. It's turned on and off using the View menu trimming bodies command. And so, you know, I explain this and what it's there for, etc. So this is a short answer. You know, I do a lot of video tutorials on YouTube as well as for my best practices course, but these are going to be text. I think that's probably what I'll do, is just often answering questions by users, and so I figured I might as well post some of them here and just have a steady flow. These actually show up if I go to the most recent here. You can see here's the question of the day. So they show up just like anything else in here. I think if we go to the next page here, we'll see that here's another question of the day. So these are just integrated into that. So and then the Hangout, like we're doing one right now, this is a recording from the Hangout that we did in March. So it's been a couple of months. I actually did one in between that was celebrating my 60th birthday that I didn't feel was appropriate to put on this website here, but in general, when I do these, I'll be posting them here, so there'll be a record of them. So that's archicaduser.com, and I hope you come and make it a regular destination to check out the latest news about ArchiCAD, and perhaps if you see something interesting, submit it as a link, add your name to the directory, and put in as much information as you'd like to share with people, and it'll become a more and more useful and interesting place for all of us. And of course, if you have a job that you'd like to hire someone for or contract, or if you're looking for work, as we get more people using this jobs board, it'll be even more useful, of course. So let us see. I think now is a good time to just do some quick tutorials in ArchiCAD on a few questions. I think that, let me just bring up one question here. So Jack Schaefer, one of my longtime clients, says, am I going to post a video of the talk? Yes, this will be posted, but here's the question: how to install a reglet, horizontal and vertical, 3 horizontal running around the building at different heights. They're 1 inch tall and 1 inch deep into the exterior plaster. Okay, so let me just go and bring up ArchiCAD here. So we've got just an ArchiCAD empty file, new file here. I'm just going to draw a box and put in a window and a door, and then I'll just go to 3D and take a look at it. So he's asking about putting in a reglet, which is a groove in the wall, often used for flashing. So you create the groove in the wall. I mean, right now these walls are just made out of generic materials, but might be masonry that you're carving the groove out of, and then you install the flashing in many cases into that, so it has something to hold on to and be glued or adhered. So how would you do that? Well, the obvious answer for me would be solid element operations. So we could create an element out of a variety of tools. Now I'm going to use the beam tool, and I'll just demonstrate. First of all, if I draw a beam on the floor plan here, and I move this, so let's just rotate this around, and I'll just drag this horizontally. Now it's starting to overlap the wall, and then I'll drag it, I'll just drag it vertically here. Now it's sticking into the wall. Okay, so now this beam, what is it made of? Well, I didn't pay any attention. This is a new file based on the ArchiCAD template. It's made out of structural concrete. Okay, now in ArchiCAD 17, building materials have priorities, and therefore structural concrete is certainly a very hard surface or hard material, and in general is going to be stronger than many other things. So it's probably going to be stronger than these other materials here. So what does that mean? If I select this and we rotate around, you can see the green line just faintly passing through there. It's actually sticking through the wall. Now if I select the wall, on the other hand, you can see the green line is cutting itself around. So there's a hole in the wall. Now, of course, we're talking about a groove, not a bump out or not a thing sticking out. So what would we do? Well, if I do this, it creates a groove or a hole. If I delete it, well, the hole goes away, but I could go and hide this layer. So let me go to the window palettes here and use quick layers. Quick layers is one of my favorite tools here, and go and say hide this layer. You can see there's a groove. Now instead of hiding it, if I undo this, if I go to the layer dialog and make that layer wireframe here, then we can see through it, and so that means that I can easily select it and change, perhaps change its height, maybe make it shorter. He said 1 inch here, and also change its how wide it is, make it narrower, and now you can see, whoops, that we've got this groove in the wall here. So in ArchiCAD 17 you can do that with the beam tool and then just hide it instead of having it in a wireframe. And if it is a simple little groove, then that's perfectly sufficient, and you can put them around the building very, very quickly. Now in previous versions of ArchiCAD, the beam tool has a priority that you can manually set, and so you may, by changing that priority value, make it stronger than the wall, and then it'll cut a hole in it. Now the beam can be rectangular like this. Of course, beams can be other shapes. We can pick a shape. Here, this is a custom shape based on the current size, but I could pick something. Let's pick. We have a. Now here's a piece of structural steel, and you can see. Oh, actually, you know what? I have to select this element, and then I can change that to. And now you can see that it's got two grooves. So this the beam could be any shape, and in fact could be a slanted shape, because some reglets, I'll just show you here. I did a little search for Google, and some of them may be slanted, and here you can see this type of shape. So you could create a complex profile in ArchiCAD to do that. So if we select this and say we want to edit the complex profile, we could literally, change this. Let me just do something sort of arbitrary. I'm going to drag that down and, drag this up or something like that. So I'm doing something really arbitrary here, but let me just say apply it. This is the new shape, and you can see how the groove is now different shapes. So basically, using complex profiles with a beam would probably be the simplest way to accomplish what Jack was asking. So I hope that is clear enough. I see a comment from Jonathan. Make it a horizontal pipe. So in terms of a pipe, if we were to go edit that profile, let me just delete everything here. I'll just delete everything in the profile, and let me just do a fill. Actually, let me do a circle here. And how big do we want this? I'll just make it 2-inch diameter here. Now, as a 2D element, it won't be seen, but if I fill it here, and this is now filled, and I designate it as something like the concrete, now it's going to be a solid, and I'll just say store this. You can see how it's changed, and now you can see how it's got a curved shape. And we are seeing the facets in the beam itself, but as soon as we hide that, whoops, let me undo that. I guess I had more than one thing selected. Here, select that, hide it. There you go. You can see how smooth that is. So I hope that answers this. Ken writes, Eric, I think you wanted to go both vertically and then horizontally, again at a different height. Well, obviously you could create other things like a column going vertically. So the idea is you create something that's going to cut the hole, and then you either use the building material priorities in ArchiCAD 17, the manually set intersection priorities for beams in ArchiCAD 16 and earlier, or solid element operations under the design menu. If you want to do the, if you're going to do any other things, you could take any type of element, a morph element or an object, and create that. So I need to do quick answers here because I want to cover a couple of other things in this session, and then I have some final announcements, and try not to go too much over an hour. Okay, so we have a question from Ben Jacks. Okay, so Ben is a new ArchiCAD user, and he is actually a teacher at University of Miami in Ohio, I believe. He says, I'm struggling to understand some essential things about layers, views, layouts, and publishing. I'm in way over my head, and he basically says, I don't understand how layers work and how model view options work, and why certain things show sometimes and not other times, and I mean, there's a lot of options and controls that interact in ArchiCAD that can be confusing. So I took a little time just to write a short answer, and I'm going to post this on the ArchiCAD user website. And I think even as let's say a relatively proficient user, you may find this useful as an overview. And so I'll just read these off and elaborate a little bit on what I wrote. Layers control what you see. So you can turn on and off groups of elements like all the furniture or the landscaping or interior walls based on layers. So they're categories of elements, and they're flexible because you can assign any element to any category. Model view options say, how do you see them? So if the walls are showing, are they showing with a lot of detail, or are they showing as just simple outlines or shaded? And windows or doors, if they're showing, do you show them with markers or not? And things like that, or simple outlines for reflective ceiling plans. The renovation filter allows you to choose elements to show or hide based on whether you want to see existing and demo elements or existing and new, so different phases of the building. And there are some options for overriding the normal look of things to make them stand out, so that you can have demo elements with dashed lines or in 3D colored in red or colored in some other color. Pens and colors affect those elements that are shown. It affects the line weights on screen and when you print. And you can have a different pen set that you're working with in your model than you are in the documentation, the drawings on the sheets, because you can say work with colors in the model because it's convenient to see different element categories in different colors, but you can then on the sheet, on the drawing, override that and say I'd like to have all of the pens in black, or the main pens in black and other ones in color. Partial structure display allows you to change whether structural elements like walls and slabs and roofs will show entirely, or you'll only see the structural core, or there's a supplemental view or intermediate view where it's doing, I guess, taking off the cladding but leaving, let's say, the core plus the sheathing. So this helps you to communicate with your engineer to create structural drawings or structural models, because they don't want to look at the exterior or the non-structural stuff. Scale determines how the model elements that you're working with, the 3D things primarily, relate to the annotation. So 2D text and labels and markers and tick marks. When you change the scale, the building still says I'm 100 feet long or 30 meters long, but the text may get bigger or smaller in relationship to it. Or technically, the text stays the same size, the building gets bigger or smaller, and the text often is locked in at a size that is legible and standardized for your output. And some annotation elements like bubbles, or for markers, or tick marks, may also be standardized, so they're specified in terms of how large they are on paper. Now, filter elements in 3D is an option that will turn on and off elements, and you can selectively say, I want to turn on or off, furniture, or turn on or off the roof, or turn on or off meshes, things like that. And you can also use a marquee and cutting planes to show parts of the model. So these affect what you see. And then finally, at least in terms of my list here, the floor plan cut plane affects how the model looks on the floor plan, because basically sometimes, or usually, you want to cut at, I'll just say chest level, 4 feet or 1 meter or something like that, but sometimes you want to show the walls up high, like in a clear story plan, you want to show the high windows, so you can change that. Or if you have split level conditions, you may want to show different cut planes in different parts of the model. Separately from all of these, which affect what you see, and if you were to print, what you would print or plot, the view menu, on-screen view options also modify what you see, so you can go from true line weight to hairline, turn on or off clean intersections, and other things. As the name implies, they affect only what you see on screen, but not the output. So even if you have true line weight turned off when you're looking, if you print, it will be with the weights. There's a separate control when you're printing to say I want to print in hairline, and so that obviously is a choice if you just want to have a quick printout that you want to mark up. Now, individual elements have controls. Of course, there's the general settings of how big they are, and what element they are, which object this is. But there are also controls that relate to the pens, which will give you the thickness of the lines, and more sophisticated controls that are such as story sensitive. A staircase will be displayed differently in many cases on the lower story, where you might have a break line, than on the upper story plan, where you'd see the entire staircase. So this is sort of, in a very short summary, all of the things that I could think of that affect what you see and what you print from the model. Now, if you think about it, we just use these in context. When you create a construction document of the floor plan, you have certain layers turned on, certain model view options. You're choosing is it a demo plan or a new plan or existing. What pens and colors. Probably most of your drawings are going to be one set of pens and colors, but if you're doing a special purpose thing for engineer, you change show the core of load-bearing walls and things like that. So all of these things we just use in context. But where this can get confusing is when he wrote here, I've been completely baffled because I had some lines on that layer which did not show up on the furnishings view, even though other lines in that layer do show up. So he was saying, I can't see certain lines. How'd they get turned off? Well, turns out that it was the lines he was referring to were inside the walls. They were skin separator lines, and they, when the furnishing plan views had the option of presentation solid selected, it meant the walls were shown in a solid form. And actually, as I read this again, in fact, that's not exactly the case. He did have presentation solid selected, but the lines themselves were not from the walls. They were separate lines, and this is sort of a tricky thing here, where if I do a line, I can choose what category it is. And this is really odd. Why is the default skin separator line? I just opened up a new project with the standard US template, and I would think that the better default would be a drafting line. So a drafting line will always show as long as its layer is turned on, whereas the skin separator line can be hidden. So if I draw two lines, I'm just going to draw a line here. I'm going to switch to drafting line and do this line here. Zoom in on it. I'll switch my model view options. Let's open up our quick options here. And I'll switch this from drafting plus fill to presentation solid. And you can see that the walls now are shown in solid, but hey, that line disappeared. So I can understand why he was mystified. Why is, when I show the furniture plan, which has a simple version of the walls, why do these lines disappear? I didn't change the layer. So hopefully this reference will be useful. Certainly it's my aim to demystify ArchiCAD and help you have the tools you need to get your work done, and if you have a problem, be able to troubleshoot it. Okay, so we are at almost the hour mark. I'm going to do one more quick demonstration here, and that is for split levels. And this is a question that I don't think this will be a sufficient explanation, but Carol Boxler writes, we have a house where the ground floor span 3 different levels that are 1 meter height difference from each other. So 1 meter would be about 3 feet, 3.5 feet. And they made each of these a different story. So basically, even though one story to the next or one level to the next was like half of it or of a typical story or less, they put them on different stories so that they could have the height markers. So that meant in an elevation or a section, they would have automatic story markers showing. But now they can't display or plot the overall plan of the house, showing all 3 levels on one view. And they've tried all sorts of things. And what should they do? So I'll try to do really a quick little sketch here. Let me put this back to our floor plan, and let's go to the story settings here. Story settings, and let's say that the second floor is we'll go up 4 feet just to make it easy. It's a little more than 1 meter here, And I'll go up to the second floor. So I'm on the second floor now here, and let me just make sure I can see the first floor with trace reference. And I'm just going to be totally arbitrary. I'll just draw another set of walls here. So now these walls, if we look in 3D, somehow I guess, I don't know why, oh, that's interesting. Why did these walls get trimmed? Oh, that's a really interesting question. These walls in ArchiCAD 17 have a setting that their top is linked to the next story up. And of course that's very useful, but in this case we wouldn't want that at all because the next story is a partial story. So we'd say not linked, and we'd set them up to 10 feet or whatever. So now we do have a split level condition here. But obviously we're only seeing one story here and one story there. If I turn off the trace and reference, turn it off, then it disappears. And in fact, we can't actually work with these walls. It says that it's inactive. Now, one way you could get something happening here is we can go down to the first floor, and for those of you outside the U.S., that would be the ground floor here, and story 0 outside there. I'm going to select all of these walls, and I'm going to say I'd like to show them not just on the home story, but all relevant stories. So now, if I go up to the second floor, you can see that they do show here. So that's one partial solution. If these walls do go up through all, she had 3 stories, and given that they were a meter apart, then they probably would, because 2 meters is about roughly 7 feet. So probably the walls are at least 8 or 9 feet, or 3 meters or something, so they probably would work. Now in some cases, you may find that, let's say this window here is not tall enough to show. So let me just make it a little bit shorter here. So if its head height is 7 feet, and remember this is at 4 feet, let me just make this a really short window. We'll say it's only going to go up 4 feet, and that it's the header to story 1 is at 4 feet. So now, or actually let me make it just 3 feet high, so it's just below. Now you notice that I still have something selected, but it's disappeared from view. If I go down to the lower story, you notice that this window is there, but if I go up here, it isn't, because it's below the cutting plane entirely. So the wall is set right now to do projected, so it's basically cutting through the wall. We could change this and say I'd like to do, let's see, okay, I guess you can't do symbolic cut when you have it showing on multiple stories. So that is an issue here. Let's see if we go to the window, and can we make the window show? Oh, it is symbolic. All right, so we do have an issue here, is that in some cases the window or door that we want to show here, we want to have a combined drawing, isn't showing because it's out of range. And so how do we deal with that? Well, one option that I would consider is, here are 2 options that I would suggest. One is putting these on the same story, so that basically you just tell the walls what height it is, because remember, when you select or you place a wall, you can say what base it is overall to the story, or overall in terms of the sea level or some other altitude. So here it's 0 at the story, but we could specify it as relative to project 0 or some other height. So I don't have to have this there. So let me go down to the first floor plan, and we'll just say that, oops, I'm going to draw some walls. Let me just even draw just a single wall, or no, I'll just draw a box here, and we'll select, get rid of this little piece here, and we'll select these walls, and we'll say that they're raised up, from 2 feet, and let's unlink it here, and we'll take it up to 10 there. So now if we go to 3D, you can see that these walls are a split level, so we can basically put the walls on the same story just at whatever height we need, and so they're going to be on one story, and they will automatically show. So that would be a general recommendation. Put it on the same story, just raise it up whatever height you need using these controls. And then what you'd want to do is also make sure these walls, in this case the simplest is to make them show symbolic cut, because basically then regardless of the heights of the doors and windows, they will show up nicely, because you're saying just give me a symbol for the window, don't actually cut through it. So that would be another option that would work nicely. And then the final option I'll just sketch out is that we could take this view and let's just take these walls and make them not show on both stories just for now. So we'll say show on home story only. So now we're going up to the second floor here, and you can see the difference. So what I'm going to do is actually put onto the sheet. So I'll go to our floor plan sheet here, and you can see here's this lower section, and I'll just use the cropping in here, and then I'm going to put in I'll just move the second floor onto the sheet, and I guess this second floor, maybe we need to say that it's fit frame to drawing. Oh, okay, why are we not seeing the second floor here? You open the source view. Here is the source view, and here's the. Oh, wait a second. Oh, I guess I didn't drag it onto the sheet. No, there. Oh, there it is. Okay, it just hadn't updated. So let me just get rid of one of these two copies here. So now what you can see is that I've got. If I drag this away, that I've got two different drawings on the sheet. But as long as I align them carefully and perhaps crop them like this, you can see how it looks like it's one drawing. And if I turn off the title for this, so if we scroll over here and say that I want to have no title, then it'll look like it's one drawing. And if I turn off the drawing frames, then it really does look like one drawing. So whether these are on different stories or different cut plane views of, of the model, you can combine more than one view next to each other to synthesize the story. So those would be my two main suggestions, is either just have them all on one story and move the walls to the right heights, or if you need to have them on other stories, then you can potentially just combine them in the on the sheet. If you do have them as separate stories, you'll only be able to see the trace reference for one story at a time, because trace reference can show one view or another view, but it can't show both the lower and the story below and the story above. So there are some limitations. And then if we do go to the section, or elevation here, okay, so here if we open this source view, so we can see some levels that are put in. One thing you may want to do is, instead of, if you only did it on one story, you wouldn't have the second floor here. You just might want to put in, manually draft this up. In other words, put in a dashed line and text and things like that for the story marker, so or the elevation for the stories. So that way, you've got it all on one story. It's simpler to work with, and then in the elevations or sections, you just manually draw something that looks the same style as the built-in story markers. Okay, so that I think hopefully answers this question from John. Can the cut plane be changed or set per story? The cut plane is set per view. So in other words, when I'm in a view, like this first floor plan here, and I go to the settings, there is an option for the cut plane settings at whatever height you want. And that means that you can have a view that's the clear story plan of just the upper windows, that's up at 10 feet, and maybe the story is a 12-foot high story, and the the cut plane is up at 10 feet. That would be, let's say, 3 meters, something like that. So each view can have its own cut plane. Okay, so Ian writes, I quite often do split level houses. My preferred method is to build up a composite floor plan with several drawings, one for each level, onto one drawing sheet. So that's exactly what I just presented. So I'm glad that works for you. All right, so I have two announcements that I'd like to make here to finish up. One has to do with the public BIM server that I mentioned, and this is sort of an early announcement because I don't have anything to show very much. But let's see, I guess I don't have it up here on the ArchiCAD user site yet. But next week I expect to announce how you can use a BIM server that I will be managing to share your projects, and there will be a charge for it because it's going to take some effort to set up and run and maintain and support, but it'll be a very nominal amount. I'm looking at say about $100 a month, $97 a month, which would cover a firm with up to maybe 5 people and maybe 2 or 3 projects. So not per project and not per person, but just a sort of a flat rate, and then maybe a little bit higher for a firm that might want more, 5 projects or 10 people or things like that. So it'll be a membership site, and the BIM server itself will be free to members, and this sort of is a way to work around the licensing for Graphisoft, which says that the BIM server is something that cannot be sold. In other words, one can't offer access to the BIM server for a price, but I can offer access to the website member area for a price, and then anybody who's a member gets free use of the BIM server. So look for an announcement next week on that. If you're interested, you want early details, send me an email and I'll fill you in. Now my final announcement is for those of you who are interested in becoming better, more efficient ArchiCAD users. I know many of you are members of the Best Practices course, and I treasure our connection, and I am continuing to develop new lessons and do more coaching and help on that. But some of you are not members, and so I'd like to offer you the opportunity to join the Best Practices course, try it out for 7 days, basically all you can eat, all you can learn in 7 days for $7. So, just a tiny little cost, and then you can look around. There's just a ton of materials inside the site. I'll bring up the site just briefly so you can see what it looks like. Basically, once you're logged into the site, you're in the member area here, and once it comes up, you'll see that there's a greeting page, and then there's the course, and you can see course is broken up into different weeks, different modules, each covering different topics. So if you've always wanted to know about how to work with favorites, or how to use the navigator, or how to do site design, all of these, if I go here, let's say you wanted to bring in a PDF survey drawing and set the north orientation, because that's something, maybe you only have the survey in a PDF form and you want to do that. So here you can see some detailed notes about it, and here you can see the video, and the video is, let's see, just in this case, it is how long? So it's 15 minutes long. So some of these lessons are 15 minutes, some are 20, 30 minutes lessons, and there's just a huge number of these lessons. So you can experiment, you can watch as many as you want over 7 days for only $7. And you also have access to the coaching program. So these are calls that I hold 3 times a month usually, where I answer questions, and we even have an index where you can see where different questions were addressed. So I don't want to go into more detail, just say it's got a huge amount there for you, and you can now get access for $7. Now the way I've set it up is that when you say, hey, this looks good, by the way, there's more information down below. This is my standard sales page for acbestpractices.com, and you can go to acbestpractices.com /7day. So /7day. And you'll see this page. And for the next 7 days and a few hours, if you click on Sign Up Now up here, you'll see that it comes up where you're paying just $7. Normally the 7-day pass is $77, but right now for the next week you can get it for $7. And then what you'll have is a special offer to continue. If you want to, you can continue with the course, become a permanent member, and pay $97 a month for 5 months. So you end up paying just under $500. I think it's $492 or something like that. The normal cost of the course is $697, so you'd save over $200. So it's up to you. You can just get the 7 days here for $7, and then you can cancel before the trial ends. Or if you let it run, then basically we'll start charging your card, and you'll get in. You'll continue to have full access to the course, and you'll end up saving a couple $100 compared to the normal price. So hopefully this is something that you'll find useful even if you just do the $7 thing, and I'm confident that once you get in there you'll see that it is really going to be an asset for you and your work with ArchiCAD. If you're a company, in other words, your firm, you can actually share the course with all members of your firm, so you don't have to pay per member. And the course is regularly updated. I'm continuing to add new content all the time. So let me just then return back. I'll just put back to that page here. No, I guess I have to go back a step here. So our acbestpractices.com/7day. I invite you to check that out, and goes on for another week. Let me see if there are some final questions. Kenneth writes, consider it like continuing education as required for architects, but only for ArchiCAD. So yeah, if you're an architect, you definitely have to keep yourself educated. And if you're an ArchiCAD user, I know that you'll benefit from having more knowledge, because what I do is I teach more than just the mechanics. I teach the best ways to do things. So let's see. Question from Brian: will the best practices course change with ArchiCAD 18? I will be creating lessons for ArchiCAD 18 later this summer after I've gotten my hands on it and gotten used to it. Absolutely. Earl says, do it, priceless. Okay, so I know we have a bunch of best practices course members on this call. So I know we have, and John writes, definitely worth it to join, and okay, so a lot of positive things. I won't read it all, but definitely set up. Okay. All right, so I see some other questions. I can't answer all of them, obviously, here. But there was one thing Robert Stensland asked. You said ArchiCAD 18 needs to work on Mavericks. Is it okay to upgrade to Mavericks now while running 17? Yes, I actually did myself a few weeks ago. I was very conservative. More often I'll be out there in front and upgrade early, but I heard about some issues with Mavericks last fall, and I waited. And then I put it in about a month ago, and it's been fine. So, okay. Anyway, in any event, I think this is a good point to finish up. I want to thank all of you for joining me. Please send me feedback, send me your comments by email, and I'll be happy to answer every question or comment. If you like this session, if you feel it was worth your time, of course, it's always nice to get positive feedback. And I'll share it if you have something really enthusiastic to say. The other thing is, tell your friends, tell your colleagues if you think that they would benefit from the 7-day offer here. It'll only run through next Wednesday, that is June 11th. At this point it's an experiment. I don't expect to repeat it in the near future. I want to see how much I can tempt people with this, and then how many people decide that they can't live without it once you try it out. So be my guest. So I think we're at a good place to finish up. This will be posted on my YouTube channel, this particular recording. It's handled automatically. Let me just actually switch. I'm going to go. Let me show myself here. I just realized that I can go and turn off. Oh, here I am. Okay. So now you can see me, and I can. Well, I can't see you, but I can pretend. So thank you all for joining me today for the ArchiCAD User Group Hangout. I've had a lot of fun getting ready for it and offering this to you. Please give me comments and suggestions and feedback. I'm always interested in hearing from you. This has been Eric Bobrow. Thanks for watching.